But I was told Control F5. I realized I'd refreshed a lot of times in my life. And then I was told to find a theme around it. Actually, it didn't take me very long to think when the refresh happened. It happened when I was told again and again and again, whatever it is you're doing, Raman, ain't going to work. And I said, I will show you that it will work. Especially when I had my American bosses who brought in the aspect to say, not only is it not going to work, if it was going to work, you Indians will never be able to do it. So little flavor to a lot of parents here. Because as we go through life, we tell everybody to conform. Don't do this, don't do that, eat this, dress like this. This checked out on zippers open. Yeah, it's conformist to have it closed. But it is always what has to be done. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that every one of us should rebel. But there are times where you don't have to conform. Because there are times I decided not to conform. When I was told it ain't gonna work with whatever alternate I came up with. And today I'm glad I did not conform. Because as a result, we created an industry. We lovingly call it the BPO industry. 1.1 million direct employees, 4 million indirect employees. A global share of 38-39%. We are the number one in the world in this, without exception. Because somebody said it ain't going to work. 48% of our employees are women. No other industry, none, has that as a percentage of female employees. So I was told I'm loony. You know, we all have people who are not very fond of you. In some shape or form, we call them your enemies. So there was a time where they sat up and said, now he's bitten something that really ain't gonna work. Because it is not that I had the answer to all the issues that would come up. But what I had is the comfort of knowing that somebody knows the answer. And if we can find that somebody, we can make it happen. So the point I want to bring out to you is, yeah, that is the culmination and that is what is spoken about a lot. And yeah, I'm proud of it, don't get me wrong. I mean, when you go into a movie hall to see a movie, somebody taps you on the back and says, I work in the industry. But it is not an isolated incident. It is not that you can wake up one day and say, somebody said it ain't going to work, I'm going to make it work. So I want to share with you a few examples from my life where I was repeatedly told it ain't going to work. My college days. At that time in the Delhi University, only 2 colleges had the festival. No other college had a festival. And a bunch of us sat down and said, why don't we, I was at Shriram College of Commerce, why don't we have a festival? We can do it. What was told? It ain't gonna work. You have no clue what it takes to set up a festival. You have to get sponsors, you have to get people to come. We named it Crossroads because we were at crossroads of whether we should do it or not do it. Today, it is an icon within the Delhi University. Yeah, we figured out how to get the sponsors. We twisted arms. We begged, pleaded. Just because somebody said it ain't gonna work. In my career, I joined a company called Shriram Fibers. Products company. They used to make fibers that goes into tires. The Shriram Group had just launched a JV with Toyota to make light commercial vehicles. They thought there was a great opportunity to do financing of the vehicles. They'd been to the board twice to say that the group should get into financing of vehicles. They were rejected twice. My boss was very keen. Said, why don't we take a third batch? We've been beaten up twice. Said, yeah. So I got out of his office and I went and said, I got this project. People laughed. What did they say? It ain't gonna work. I said, why won't it work? So I sat down and figured out what the board was looking for. I sat down and figured out what are the two proposals that were made. They were only to finance the vehicles of that company. But the opportunity was much larger. It was always the employee telling the board. I hired a consultant to come back and tell us what the opportunity was. I went back to the board to say that the opportunity is much larger and this is what we are going to do. And I still remember, I get 18 minutes here. I got 15 minutes that time. The sweetest words of the chairman at the end of it was, yes, let's go ahead. Because when it ain't gonna work, it is up to you to figure out what is needed to make it work. American Express, we compete with a bank that has multiple branches, hundreds of branches. So when you pay with your card, you go to the place and pay, the merchant has to get the money after you've paid for your whatever, restaurant, food, whatever you buy, etc. At that time, American Express used to pay 1 week later or 15 days later or 1 month later. You could choose. We gave the choice of that. But our competition went and said, we'll pay you the same day. And therefore, the merchant stopped accepting American Express. Today when you go and you swipe the card, there are those little machines called the electronic data collection, the EDC machines. Those machines did not exist at that time. It was that zip zap. There was a piece of paper that came out and you signed. And our competition, they had a branch network. Every branch would go to the merchants around it and say, come to us, we'll pay you there and then. American Express had no branch. American Express had no desire to open a branch. It would have been highly unprofitable. We were losing market share very, very rapidly. And we were told we have to find a way to do a same-day pay. I got the project because I put up my hand for it. What was I told? It ain't gonna work. You finally got something that ain't gonna work. Simple technique of putting down what is the process that is followed. We figured out it is converting the data into electronic form. We could process the electronic form. After that, we could send the checks over phone wires. That time there was no fancy Wi-Fi and internet that we have today. We set up multiple data centers to collect and convert data. We made it happen. And we regained market share and put competition to shame. And then within the same American Express, we grew up to launch the Indian rupee card. First time, the company decided to have local management run the card. I was local. I had no idea how to run the card. So they sent me for training. All overseas, I learned in Singapore, in Hong Kong, in Australia, in UK, in Brighton, in US. Lots of learnings over 2 years. Me and my team were trained. And lo and behold, we launched the card. So I could have sat and celebrated the success of the launch of the card, which I did. Don't get me wrong. I got some nice foreign holidays as bonuses, and the kids still remember it. But what is important is I thought that the processes that we set up, based on the learnings that we'd got from all over the place, was superior to the processes from where I had been trained. They were higher quality, they were lower in cost. Because of essentially people like you and me, educated, trainable, willing to learn and willing to demonstrate what we've learned. And that is where I started evangelizing to say that we could do international work. This is what, 30 odd years ago. Remember, nobody was doing international work out of India at that time. It was an alien concept. So when I went to my bosses and said, we'll do it, what did they say? It ain't gonna work. You Indians don't realize there's a lot that you have to do. Said, we'll figure out. I made such a pain of myself, they gave me a project that was destined to fail because 5 years they had tried to make that project succeed. It was given to us in India to shut us up. 5 years, 7 months, we had it fixed. Now, instead of a project shutting us up, we shut those guys up to show that we Indians were as capable and as competent as our international counterparts if we did the right training, if we brought in the right capability. That evangelization by accident gave birth to an industry. So then, based on that success, a company called GE, General Electric, a Fortune 5 company hired me. What I'd set up for American Express was based on my boss telling the international people that either you will take that process to India or your successor will. So it was top-down pressure. And those of you who, I deal a lot with Americans, use the baseball example. They were pitchers and we were the catchers. So we were very good catchers. And we created quite a phenomena. So based on that, GE hired me. And I thought it would be the same. I'd done work for international accounting work. The CFO was my customer. Jim Pock was the CFO of GE Capital. I still remember the name. He just retired. And 4th week in my new job, I asked for a meeting. He sat across. I told him what all we had done for American Express and how much of a big deal it was. And he said, yeah, very nice, yeah. What you've done is great potential. But tell me, what have you done for GE? I said, hey, I just joined 4 weeks ago, you know. What did he say? It ain't gonna work. Come back when you've done something for GE. And he picked up his papers, he stood up, and he walked out. And I literally could see, like you see in those comic books, my career flying out with him. I'd left American Express to take up this great job with this great company. And that is where I realized that being a catcher was was not good enough. One had to be the pitcher. One had to start selling. And that we didn't know selling, but we had the right guys. We created the capability. That company that got created is called Genpact. It has 80,000 people today. Is the largest services company in the BPO space out of India, perhaps globally. If Jim Park had not created that accident and said, hey pal, it ain't gonna work, that company may never have been created. So, a couple of sayings to share my learnings. If you want something in your life you'll have to do something you've never done. The first part is thinking. At times it's called self-belief or self-stupidness, because you're so stupid that you don't know there was another option. But it is that desire to say what it is that you want to accomplish. And these sayings are from the little charts I have on the wall of my room. In my office, there are at least, 60, 70 sayings that adorn the wall. So I just picked up two of them to share with you. And the next one is my favorite. How does one become a butterfly? You must want to fly so much that you are willing to give up being a caterpillar. The refresh, the control F5 leads to fundamental changes where you've got to accept to be able to embrace that change. Thank you very much.